June 2017, Lake Mead's waterline collapses, exposing a rusted silver-blue Mustang half buried in cracked mud. Inside, two skeletons and a silver necklace engraved A.R.W. 46 years earlier, Amy and Rachel Whitaker vanished after an outdoor movie bed's untouched, town frozen in grief. The car's paint matches a military truck. The suspect? A decorated Air Force veteran who searched with the family, lit candles at memorials, and waved hello every morning. He was questioned in 1971, then released. Now DNA, Polaroids, and a Super 8 film surface, proving he and the girl's own father buried the truth beneath the lake. One question burns. How did evil hide in plain sight for half a century? June 2017. The air over the Nevada desert felt like fire, pressing down on cracked earth and faded rocks near the dying edges of Lake Mead, 10 miles south of Boulder City. A single flashlight beam sliced through the dry darkness. Conservation Officer Daniel Cruz had done this route hundreds of times, checking water levels and mapping the shrinking shoreline, but tonight felt different. His boots sank into soft mud, and that faint metallic glimmer caught his eye, something half buried in the ground, something that didn't belong here. He squatted down, brushed his gloved hand over it, and his breath hitched. A silver-blue curve peeked out beneath the clay chrome, maybe. No, it looked like the corner of an old car bumper, shining under layers of dust and time. Daniel reached for his radio, voice breaking through static. Bass. I need a recovery unit and forensics to the east side of Lake Mead. Now? The heat in his throat made every word dry and ragged. He had no idea that call was about to unlock a mystery that had haunted Nevada for nearly half a century by sunrise. The old Mustang was pulled from the lakebed, its body eaten away by years underwater. Inside were two skeletons side by side, and a small silver necklace tangled between them, engraved with 3 simple letters. R. That necklace belonged to Amy Rachel Whitaker, a 17-year-old girl who had vanished along with her 15-year-old sister. Rachel, one quiet summer night in 1971, for 46 long years. The Whitaker sisters' disappearance had been Boulder City's most painful ghost story. Everyone remembered that night, the outdoor movie, the warm wind, the laughter echoing down Main Street. Then, the silence. Their beds untouched, their mother's voice fading as she called their names. A whole town frozen in guilt and unanswered questions. 2 doors in that small cedar house never closed again until the day their mother died. When that Mustang came out of the ground, it wasn't just metal being unearthed. It was the truth. And the truth has a way of burning under the desert sun. The discovery at Lake Mead didn't just close a missing persons case. It cracked open secrets that Boulder City had buried since the Cold War era. Because when investigators identified their main suspect, it wasn't some drifter or outsider. It was a man everyone trusted. A decorated Air Force veteran. A neighbor who attended block parties and waved to the mailman. A man who, for 46 years, lived with an unthinkable secret buried deep in his heart. What makes this story so haunting is how close the answer always was. The suspect had been questioned in the original investigation, then released. Just a line in a dusty file. While the Whitaker family suffered, he lived quietly among them, attending memorials, shaking hands with grieving parents, even lighting candles for the very girls whose lives he took. He hid behind his medals and polite smile, pretending to be part of the healing, while he was the reason there was pain at all. Back in 1971, the sisters had left a local outdoor movie. The night was warm, the kind of desert heat that hums through the air. Amy's silver-blue Mustang sat under a cottonwood tree, headlights catching the dust in soft yellow swirls. She tossed her jacket in the back seat, laughing as her younger sister climbed in. The radio played "Ain't No Mountain High Enough." its sound spilling into the night as the car rolled toward Lake Mead's narrow road. The town lights faded behind them. The road curved, shimmered, and then nothing. The car vanished. The next morning, their mother, Margaret Whitaker, woke early. 2 beds were still made. Lipstick still open on the dresser, the Mustang missing from the driveway. She stood on her porch, eyes on the dusty horizon. The wind carried silence, and deep down, she knew something was wrong. That single moment, the stillness, the absence would echo for decades. Police scoured the area, but there were no leads. No witnesses. No wreckage. The lake swallowed its secrets, and the case slowly faded into rumor. Over time, the story twisted into small-town folklore. With whispers in diners and quiet accusations exchanged at church doors. Neighbors stopped trusting each other. Families turned cold. And every year, when August came, the desert heat brought the memories back like a ghost that wouldn't leave. Yet, truth doesn't die. It waits. Beneath mud and water, beneath silence and sham it waits. When Lake Mead's water levels dropped in 2017. Nature itself revealed what people had buried. The Mustang. The skeletons. The necklace. And forensics told the rest. DNA confirmed the girls' identities. And new scanning technology traced paint samples to a type of military truck used only by Air Force personnel in the early 1970s. Detectives began connecting dots: old interviews, missing evidence, misplaced files. Each clue formed a timeline that pointed back to someone who had slipped through the cracks. A former Air Force technician who'd once been stationed near the Hoover Dam. He had motive. He had opportunity. And most chillingly, he had been part of the original volunteer search team for the Whitaker sisters. He'd looked their mother in the eyes and promised, "We'll find them." For years, Boulder City believed evil had passed them by. But it had lived right next door, mowing its lawn, waving good morning, paying bills on time. And when the truth came out, it shattered what little piece the town had rebuilt. Some people refused to believe it. Others said they'd always suspected something off about him. But in the end, the evidence didn't lie. The science didn't lie. The lake didn't lie. This discovery was more than closure. Was justice finally catching up after decades of silence? It showed what happens when persistence meets technology, when forgotten voices finally speak. It proved that time might bury the truth, but it can never erase it. Every story like this carries weight not just for those who lost someone, but for anyone who's ever wondered if secrets really stay hidden forever. The Whitaker case reminds us that beneath every calm surface, something might be waiting just one low tide away from being found. So, as the Mustang's rusted frame sat under the harsh Nevada sun, surrounded by camera crews and forensic tents, the air seemed heavier. Not because of the heat, but because the past had finally come home, and that's where our story begins. The Nevada desert. Burned under a pale orange sun when Ray Donovan steered his Jeep toward the gates of Nellis Air Force Base. The hum of the engine faded as 2 guards approached, rifles slung low, eyes scanning the desert glare. "Badge and verification," one said. His tone clipped. Professional Ray handed over the paperwork credentials. A request to access vehicle records. The younger guard frowned as he read the slip. "That truck model," he muttered, glancing up. "Heard one like that went missing Saturday night." Ray's gaze sharpened. "Missing. Returned next morning," the guard replied. "You'll have to check inside, sir." Inside the base, the air carried the scent of oil and gasoline, heavy as tar. Long rows of corrugated warehouses stretched across the tarmac, each humming faintly with engines and machinery. The sound of wrenches echoed a mechanical heartbeat of steel and duty. A motor pool officer met him at the hangar, leading him toward a logbook, thick with grease and age. Its pages were handwritten in fading blue ink. Truck M35. Serial 177B, the officer said, pointing to a line. Checked out for 6 hours, returned 0700. Signed by a T. Hale. Ray's finger stopped on the name. Thomas Hale, who's that? Former test pilot, the officer replied. Now a maintenance consultant. Still has clearance for field testing. Ray tore a photocopy of the entry, sliding it into his folder. Then I'll need to speak with him. Hale's office sat behind the main runway, a lonely administrative building surrounded by gravel and dust. Inside, maps covered the walls, each marked with black ink and faded tape. The man who stepped out to greet Ray was tall, sharp, military-cut hair. Eyes as calm as the desert horizon. Clark County Police. Hale's voice was even. What's this about? Ray didn't waste time. We're investigating the disappearance of the Whitaker sisters. A witness saw a military-style green truck near Hoover Dam that night. Base records show you took one out at the same time. For a moment, silence filled the space. Only the faint buzz of a fluorescent light. Then Hale nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I took the truck. Engine kept stalling. Needed a test run on the incline by the dam. Ray studied his expression, steady, controlled, almost rehearsed. Were you alone? I was, Hale answered. Back by early morning. It's in the log. Ray leaned forward. Did you drive along Lake Mead Shore Road? Hale's lips curved slightly. I don't recall. Maybe, maybe not. I drove a few miles, turned back. What's this about, Lieutenant? Ray flipped his notebook open. A civilian car, a blue Mustang, vanished the same night. Paint on nearby rocks matches a military code. You sure you can't explain that? Hale's gaze sharpened. Military paint's everywhere in this state. You gonna accuse every truck in Nevada? The interrogation lasted under an hour. No breaks, no emotion. When Ray finally stood, he had nothing but suspicion, half-truths, and a cigarette haze that clung to Hale's smirk. As he left, Hale called after him, voice cool and certain. If you want confirmation, talk to my wife. She'll tell you I was home before midnight. That afternoon, Ray met Linda Hale Younger, quiet eyes dulled by exhaustion. Their house near the East Gate was neat, almost too neat. She sat at the kitchen table, hands folded tight. He came home late that night, she murmured. Maybe around 12. I was asleep, heard the truck pull in. Did he say anything? Ray asked gently. She shook her head. Just that the truck was fine. But Ray noticed the tremor in her voice, the small flicker of fear hiding behind her eyes. Fear not of him, but of her husband. By sunset, Ray was back in the base commander's office, a room dressed in authority. Fighter jet photos lined the walls. The American flag hung still behind the desk. Colonel Morton, square-jawed and unreadable, skimmed Ray's report. Deputy Donovan, he said flatly. This isn't under your jurisdiction. There's no federal evidence here. And Thomas Hale is one of ours. Ray pushed the file forward. We found paint on the rocks, same as your trucks. Morton didn't look up. We have hundreds of trucks with that paint. You want to test them all? Take your concerns back to Boulder City. Ray's jaw tightened. He knew that tone. The one that said, this ends here. He took back the file. Understood. As he stepped out, the evening sun bled across the tarmac, tinting the metal warehouses crimson. The wind carried the smell of iron and smoke in his Jeep. Ray opened his notebook and wrote his last line of the day. Thomas Hale, admitted using truck near Hoover Dam. Alibi weak. Further verification required. He drew a long line under it, the kind that meant this isn't over. But deep down, he knew the truth. The report would never pass approval. Days later, a single memo arrived at the precinct. Investigation suspended. Lack of sufficient evidence. K. And just like that, it was gone. The case froze. The trail went cold, and the man from Nellis vanished behind military walls by late winter. Lake Mead had swallowed the shoreline where search teams once stood. The rising water erased tire tracks, markers, everything. The desert reclaimed its silence. Ray visited one last time. Sinking in mud, staring out over the water that now covered the truth. He bent down, picked up a single stone streaked with faded blue paint. The last whisper of the evidence he'd fought to keep alive. He pocketed it quietly. Back at the Boulder City Police Station. Dust coated the air, and silence hung heavy. Ray's superior, weary cigarette burning low slid the file across the desk. No new leads. No vehicle. No witnesses, he said. You want me to start a war with the Air Force over paint flakes? Ray didn't answer. He just looked at the photograph of the Whitaker sisters on the desk, smiling, alive. Frozen in a moment the world had already forgotten. The chief stamped the file. Unsolved missing. Case suspended. Ray stayed seated long after the others had left. The sound of the ceiling fan, the only thing keeping the room alive. Weeks passed. The Whitaker family packed their things and left Boulder City. Margaret Whitaker left a single letter for Ray. Thank you for trying. We can't stay here anymore, he never replied. He simply folded it and placed it in his drawer. But every morning after, he stopped by the lake, now swollen and silent. The road was gone, submerged beneath brown water. Only the top of one rock remained visible. Like a scar, the earth refused to heal. Life in Boulder City moved on. New buildings rose, new cases came in. And the town slowly forgot. But Ray couldn't. He photocopied the Whitaker file in secret. Every photograph, every erased report. In the margins of his private notebook, he wrote one final line. Thomas Hale, possible lead. Military obstruction noted. When the clerk asked why, he answered quietly, in case someone still wants the truth. By the time he left the force and took a job in private security, the desert had already buried most of what he'd found. Yet every few years, drought would lower Lake Mead's waters, exposing fragments, rusted metal, splintered wood, scraps of a forgotten time, and every time the water receded, it was as if the past whispered his name again. The decades slipped quietly across Nevada's desert. And so did the memory of the Whitaker sisters. Boulder City grew busier. New highways, new families, new lives. By the time the 1980s arrived, the case was nothing more than a 4-page relic buried deep inside an archive labeled File 71. The ink had faded. The paper yellowed, and the red stamp that once screamed unsolved now looked more like a whisper. A young officer, fresh from academy training, once held the file up and asked the records manager, "Sir, are we ever reopening this?" The old man just shook his head. 2 girls, a car gone missing. Probably sank in Lake Mead. Happens more often than you'd think. And with that, the file was pushed back onto the shelf, collecting another layer of dust. By the 1990s, technology began rewriting what police thought possible. DNA analysis, advanced forensics, digital case records. Old crimes were suddenly waking up from their graves, but not this one. The Whitaker file moved from one evidence room to another, from Clark County storage to Henderson archives, and back again. Somewhere in the shuffle, a chain of custody broke. Inside a plastic evidence bag lay the last trace of the sisters, a small piece of blue fabric, a shoe sole, and a paint flake with metallic sheen. When a young technician noted the missing signature, he scribbled a short comment, "Specimen degraded. Recommend disposal." But instead of discarding it, he quietly shoved the bag into a rusted metal box at the back of a shelf. Maybe he didn't have the heart to destroy it. Maybe he sensed it mattered. Whatever the reason, that decision would change everything. Years drifted on. Ray Donovan had long retired, his hair gray, his steps slower. He worked part-time security for a Las Vegas firm, the kind of man the world no longer asks questions from. But in his drawer, he kept one file. The Whitaker sisters. The same pages, the same maps, the same pain. Neighbors said that near the end, Ray would sometimes stare at the old Lake Mead map for hours. In his final days, he mailed that file along with a note to an old friend still working at the department. The letter read only, "Don't let them forget this." Long after, Ray passed quietly. No obituary. No ceremony. Just a name fading into the same silence as the case. He couldn't solve time moved differently in the desert. By the early 2000s, Lake Mead began to shrink slowly, then all at once. The water that once drowned evidence now pulled back, exposing the bones of the past. Locals joked that the lake was aging. Scientists warned it was dying. But beneath those falling waters, something waited summer. 2010. Students from Boulder High were working on a school project about Nevada's lost histories. One girl found an old clipping in the library. Whitaker sisters vanished near Hoover Dam, minus 1971. They printed the article for the campus paper, along with a grainy, black and white photo of the smiling, blonde sisters. The image stirred something in the town. Older residents paused at the newspaper stands, staring long at faces they hadn't seen in 40 years. A retired postman brought the article to the local police station. "Whatever happened to them?" he asked softly. The desk sergeant barely looked up. "Too old, sir. No one remembers." And once again, the story closed, not because of secrecy, but because of forgetting. Until the summer of 2017, Nevada was choking through its worst drought in recorded history. 6 years without real rain, 2 of unbearable heat. News helicopters flew over Lake Mead, showing its retreating shoreline. The waterline dropping nearly 30 meters. Marinas lay dry. Docks jutted like ribs of a buried beast. Locals shook their heads. Never seen it this low, it seemed. Was about to return what it once hid. One afternoon that June, a fisherman named Bill Sanders was walking along the eastern edge of the lake, a part that hadn't seen sunlight in half a century. The heat pressed down like iron as he cast his line near Boulder Harbor. Something caught the sun, a sharp glint in the mud. He bent down, brushing away the dirt, expecting an old paint can. But as more of it emerged, he froze. Curved metal. Silver paint. A smooth edge like the frame of a car's tail. He stumbled back, heart pounding. Then he saw it. A rear bumper, half buried. The faded imprint of a Mustang logo. Within hours, the shoreline buzzed with movement. Rangers cordoned off the area, calling in state police by nightfall. The lake that once swallowed a mystery had begun to spit it back out. News broke the next morning. Lake Mead's dropping levels reveal submerged 1970s car, possible link to missing persons case. Detective Laura Jensen, newly promoted and sharp-eyed, was assigned to the scene. She'd grown up in Boulder City, had heard whispers of the Whitaker case from her grandmother, who'd once known Ray Donovan when she arrived. The car was already half unearthed, its silver-blue frame eaten by rust. The license plate barely legible. 7GJ214. She crouched beside the wreckage, brushing off a layer of silt. Inside the vehicle, divers had found a handbag, fragments of fabric, and a driver's license, the edges water-warped but still readable. Susan Whitaker. The name that hadn't been spoken aloud in 46 years. Laura's voice was quiet. "Get the remains bagged. Send everything to forensics." As she stood, she noticed something strange near the wheel arch. Faint traces of grayish-blue paint that didn't match the car's body, a detail small enough to ignore. But she didn't. She ordered a microsample collected for chemical testing. The same kind of paint that once matched a military vehicle. That night, back in the station's evidence room, Laura pulled the original file. Archive 71. Whitaker case. The paper was brittle, the ink fading. But Ray Donovan's handwritten notes were still there. Truck M35. Paint metallic gray-blue. Thomas Hale, military obstruction suspected. She exhaled slowly, realizing what she held. Not just a cold case, but a buried truth that had waited half a century to resurface. 2 days later, forensic techs prepared the newly found samples for analysis: the paint, the metal, and the remains recovered from the Mustang's driver's seat. One technician held up an old envelope marked 1971 evidence, blue fabric, unverified. It was the same degraded specimen once marked for disposal decades earlier. He hesitated for a moment, then replaced the tag with a new one. Priority DNA crossmatch. The bag, carrying the last trace of the Whitaker sisters, was sealed once again, this time not to be forgotten, but to be tested as the machine hummed to life and the tray slid inside the sequencer. The technician whispered under his breath, "Let's see what the past has to say." The lab lights flickered softly against the metal table. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the dry lake bed. For the first time in 46 years, the case of the Whitaker sisters had begun to breathe again. In the dim light of the evidence lab, silence feels alive. Every agent stands still as the technician opens the transport box. Inside lie ordinary things: a paper coffee cup with dried stains, a toothbrush head, a used tissue. Simple objects, yet heavy with ghosts. The air thickens. Everyone knows this is the moment 46 years have led to. In just 48 hours, the results arrive: a partial DNA match between Thomas E. Hale and the biological residue taken from the steering wheel of the recovered Mustang. Specimen #7B. The report spans 2 pages, but Laura Bennett stops at 1 line. The air leaves her chest. Skin cells' microscopic traces left on the gearshift have named a killer half a century later. She closes her eyes briefly, whispering, "Finally." Minutes later, inside the sealed operations room, Laura projects a faded photo on the screen. An elderly man stares back. Silver hair, stooped shoulders, cold, unreadable eyes. "This," she says steadily, "is Thomas E. Hale, the man who drove the M35 military truck on August 14, 1971. A young agent hesitates. What if he says it was an accident? Laura's eyes lock on the photo. Voice steady, but hard. Then we'll find what he's hiding in that house. That night, surveillance begins. Cameras follow Hale's quiet routine, driving to a gas station, buying 2 beers and a newspaper, chatting with the clerk. Then back home, he sits for hours on his porch, his eyes lost in the still street. He looks harmless, ordinary. But Laura doesn't see an old man. She sees a soldier behind a truck's wheel, headlights blinding the desert night. The Mustang spinning off the dirt road. Through the long night, she drafts a search warrant. Files spread across her desk like veins. The torn Nellis logbook, the 1971 inquiry, the DNA results all connected by red threads. Each thread running from the military base to one name: Hale. When dawn breaks, she stands before the Nevada state prosecutor. The room is silent as she slides her report forward. "How long have you tracked him?" The prosecutor asks. 11 days, Laura replies. Every move recorded. DNA confirmed. He leans back, sighing. "You know this touches the military, right? It won't be easy." Laura's voice doesn't shake. Truth doesn't change because it's inconvenient. A long silence follows. Then the sound of a pen scratching paper. "Warrant approved." Laura glances at her watch for 18 a.m. tomorrow at dawn, she says. "We go to Henderson." Outside, the early sky is a deep indigo. Mist curls across her car windshield. She texts the team. Warrant signed. Execute at dawn. At 5:02 a.m. for unmarked SUVs line the quiet street in Henderson. Inside, the SWAT team moves like clockwork armor, tight. RADIOS, low. Laura's whisper breaks the silence. Confirm target location. Thomas Hale inside. The voice replies through her earpiece. Living room light turned on 2 minutes ago. Laura exhales. Execute warrant. Doors burst open. The shout police. Search warrant. Slices through the dawn inside. Thomas Hale stands motionless in his bathrobe, coffee steaming in his hand. He doesn't run, doesn't resist. Just looks up and says, "Horse, you finally came." Laura steps in last. The house is immaculate. Oh. Every tool and book perfectly placed, a soldier's order frozen in time. Thomas E. Hale. She reads aloud, holding the warrant. You're under investigation for the 1971 murder case. Hale smiles faintly. 46 years. And you still call it a case? Laura nods to her team. Start the search. Ground floor, workshop, basement. The basement door creaks open. The air shifts, damp, metallic, heavy with age. Flashlights cut through the dark. Tools hang neatly on concrete walls. A technician kneels, calling softly, "Agent Bennett. You need to see this." Beneath a tarp sits a worn leather chest. The lock breaks easily, releasing a breath of dust and time. Inside, a small pouch. A stack of Polaroids tied with a brittle rubber band. Laura opens the pouch, an old Nellis Air Base ID card. Stamped Thomas E. Hale, Mechanical Division. And a faded memo marked, Inspection Report, M35 Truck Number 177B. August 1971. She moves to the photos. The first, a silver-blue Mustang parked near a sandy slope. The second, the same car, rear-crushed, mud-smeared. Hale standing beside it, holding a shovel. Her voice cuts through the silence. Hold position. Photograph everything. The team moves methodically, each photo tagged and numbered. A ghost story unfolding under LED light. Then, a voice. "Bennett, there's a crack in the floor." They shine a beam, revealing a fresh patch of cement. Laura kneels, scraping gently. Dust falls away, showing a rectangular outline. Drill it. The concrete breaks with a scream. Dust clouds the air. Beneath, wrapped in oilcloth, lie two objects, a silver necklace and a decayed blue fabric scrap. The necklace glints under the flashlight. On its pendant, engraved letters. A.R.W. Amy, Rachel Whitaker. No one speaks. The room freezes. Laura whispers, finally. In the light. Across the room, Hale watches silently. For the first time, his hardened expression cracks, guilt, grief, and something unspoken flickering in his eyes. He's led upstairs in cuffs. As he's escorted out, he glances around his house, whispering, "Truth is what you want to believe." Laura answers coldly, "You'll have your chance to talk." Outside, the morning sun burns the mist away. The shadow of his handcuffs stretches long across the wall by noon. News hits the headlines. Retired Air Force officer. Arrested in 46-year-old murder case. Hale's old Air Force. Photo appears beside an image of the rusted Mustang, two ghosts sharing the same screen. That afternoon, Laura sits alone in Henderson's precinct office. Before her, sealed evidence bags hold the silver necklace, blue cloth, and Polaroids. Silent witnesses that finally speak. She writes in her notebook, "Subject in custody. Physical evidence recovered. Direct link to victims. Case number 71082, reclassified. Homicide." Her hand trembles slightly as she looks out the window. The street outside remains quiet, unchanged. But in her heart, something enormous has shifted. The Nevada desert and its silence have finally begun to speak. Hours later, in the interrogation room, the air feels heavy and metallic. Thomas Hale sits at the table, hands cuffed loosely. His back straight, as if attending a military review. Laura enters, setting the thick case file between them. "You know why you're here?" He smirks faintly. "My lawyer told me." "Then you know what we found." She slides the photos forward. The necklace, the Polaroids, the report. 46 years you kept these. Why? "Souvenirs," he says, almost mocking. "Evidence of murder," Laura replies. He shrugs. "You turned an accident into a crime." She pulls the DNA report from her pocket. "Your skin cells were on the steering wheel. 99.6% match." He tilts his head, calm. "Of course. I touched it that night. August 14th, 1971. The night they died." His eyes meet hers. "I didn't kill anyone. I just helped. She presses. "By pushing the car into Lake Mead." "I didn't push it," he says slowly. "I've followed orders." "Whose orders?" A long silence. "Then, the person you should ask isn't me. Richard Whitaker knew more than I did." Laura freezes. The victim's father. Her heart races as she writes the name down. Richard Whitaker. Hale leans back, tired but sharp. "You think I'm the only one with secrets?" Whitaker worked military transport. He had connections. When his daughters died, he made it disappear. Laura's jaw tightens. "You expect me to believe the father was involved?" "You don't have to believe," Hale says. "Just look for what you haven't found: the truck. Find it. And you'll know who drove that night." His words hang in the cold air. Laura signals the officers. "Take him back to holding." As they lead him away, he adds softly, "Not everyone wants the truth, Bennett. Be careful what you dig up." The steel door closes with a dull echo. Laura sits back down, staring at her notes. Hale denies. Claims cover-up involving Richard Whitaker. Possible military connection persists. She underlines Whitaker's name twice, whispering, "If you're telling the truth." "I'll find it." Outside, Nevada burns under the midday sun. But inside Laura's office, a chill settles. The kind that comes when the truth is close, but still hidden beneath the sand. In Reno's forensic lab later that night, a technician opens a small metal box from Hale's basement. Inside, an old Super 8 film reel. Label faded except for 2 words, August 71. Behind the glass, Laura watches, her breath slowing. If this film shows what they think it does, it's the only surviving record of what really happened that night. The scanner clicks softly, the screen flickering with fragile life. Faded images bloom a dirt slope, headlights glinting off dark water. The shaky frame reveals a camera set on a car hood, its lens trembling in the Nevada wind. A low male voice breaks through the static, familiar and heavy. "All right? Get closer. Stay quiet. I'll film it clear." Then a young man in a worn military uniform steps into view, shovel in hand. Thomas E. Hale. Beside him stands a shorter figure in a white shirt, clutching a flashlight. Richard Whitaker, the room watching the film, is silent. Laura's skin prickles as the silver-blue Mustang appears. Taillights flickering, mud caked over its body. Whitaker bends toward the door, trembling fingers brushing the handle. Hale's voice again, cold, steady. "Ready?" Whitaker nods weakly. The flashlight tilts, catching the water's edge. The car begins to roll slow, deliberate, its wheels cutting grooves in the wet sand. Hale leans his shoulder into the trunk. Whitaker steadies the side. Water splashes. Gravel slides. The engine hums once, then dies. The taillights flash red, reflected on the water for a brief second before disappearing into blackness. Hale exhales, lowering the flashlight. Whitaker stands motionless, lips moving, maybe whispering, "I'm sorry." Then the frame shakes and cuts to black. The technician stops the reel, turning to Laura. "That's all. A minute and a half. No edits." Laura's voice is tight. "Can you confirm when it was filmed?" "We're analyzing moonlight angles and wind direction." Estimate, between 11 p.m. and midnight. August 14, 1971. Laura stares at the frozen final frame. The Mustang sinking beneath Lake Mead. Two men standing like ghosts against the glow of Hoover Dam. Every theory, every note, every whisper of doubt now made real. What pierces her most isn't the crime itself. It's Whitaker's expression, not the face of a killer, but of a man shattered by guilt. As the lab digitizes the reel, Laura replays it again and again. At second 81, the pendant, the silver necklace, engraved A.R.W., catches the flashlight's beam. Proof. The same pendant found buried beneath Hale's basement floor. Dr. Pierce steps beside her. "We've reviewed every frame. It's genuine, filmed that night. No staging, no edits." The men are Hale and Whitaker. Laura nods, eyes fixed on the screen. "I know." By afternoon, she's in the prosecutor's office. The report's final line reads bold and unflinching. Super 8 film confirms. Concealment of vehicle by Thomas E. Hale and Richard Whitaker. August 14, 1971. The prosecutor studies the evidence photos to blurred men by the lake. "So it wasn't just murder," he says quietly. "They staged it. Hid everything for half a century." Laura answers, "Hale confessed. Whitaker's gone. But truth isn't." That night, Nevada watches history replay on its screens. The yellowed film runs on every channel, two shadows, one sinking car. Below, the ticker scrolls. Super 8 film uncovered proof of 1971 Lake Mead covered dash up in her office. Laura turns off the TV. The blue glow fades across her tired face. On the desk rests the sealed evidence bag, number 17-8, holding the reel that resurrected the past. She places her hand over it and whispers, "The truth has a shape now." Outside, the desert wind moans through Henderson streets. Carrying whispers from Lake Mead, the sound of souls finally being heard. The interrogation room feels colder than usual. Thomas Hale sits at the table, flanked by two officers. 3 days since the reel surfaced, his defiance is gone, replaced by quiet fatigue. Laura places a recorder and a sealed envelope on the table. "Mr. Hale," she says, "we recovered the Super 8 film. Want to see it?" He gives a low, dry laugh. "No need. I know what it shows." She turns the laptop toward him anyway. The screen flickers headlights, the slope, the silver Mustang sliding into black water. When it ends, Laura's voice is calm but sharp. "This isn't theory anymore, Mr. Hale. This is truth." For a long moment, he's silent. Then, a sigh. "I thought I could take it to my grave." "You couldn't," Laura replies softly. He shakes his head. "No. Because guilt doesn't die with time." She starts the recorder. Statement begins October 5, 2017. And then, Hale tells everything. How Whitaker called him that night, panicked. How he found the Mustang wrecked near the lake. Amy's body by the hood. Rachel slumped in the back seat, both gone. How Whitaker, drunk, terrified, begged for help. Hale's voice cracks. He said he didn't mean to, that he lost control. I didn't ask. I just knew he'd lose everything. So I helped. Pulled the car with the M35, filmed it. Buried it all. He lowers his head. Afterward, he sent me money. 20,000, said we must protect our honor. Laura asks quietly, "Were you aware it was illegal?" "Yes," Hale says, voice trembling. But in the military, honor and orders blur. I chose wrong. The recorder clicks as Laura ends the session. Anything to add? He hesitates. Just this, I regret it. Not because I'm caught, because they never rested. Laura stands. Now they will. As the guards escort him away, he turns once more. Thanks for letting me say it. The door shuts. Silence returns. Laura writes the case's final line. Confession recorded. Thomas E. Hale admits aiding concealment of deaths caused by Richard Whitaker. Evidence corroborated by Super 8 film. Case concluded. She closes her notebook and steps into the sunlit hallway. Her hand brushes the courthouse plaque. Justice never forgets. 46 years, she whispers, but it came. November 2017, Clark County Courthouse, Las Vegas. Morning light floods the room as the trial begins. Judge Martha Delaney presides. Cameras click. Reporters murmur. At the defense table sits Thomas E. Hale, 78, frail but composed. Across the aisle, Laura Bennett, the woman who dug the past from its grave, takes her seat as the key witness. Prosecutor Michael Owens faces the jury. We are not just judging a man, he says. We are asking, can honor ever be built on a lie? The lights dim. The Super 8 reel plays once more. On screen, two men, a lake, and a car sinking into darkness. When the final frame freezes, the courtroom is still. Owens steps forward, voice thick. These men erased a crime for 46 years. One is gone. The other sits before you. This, he lifts a photo of the A.R.W. necklace, is all that remains of a girl denied her life. When the lights return, defense attorney Ellen Morris rises. My client doesn't deny what you saw, she says softly. He didn't kill. He was loyal to a friend, to a promise. For 46 years, he's lived under his own sentence of guilt. Owens answers sharply. Loyalty to a lie isn't honor. It's a crime that silences the innocent. Minutes later, the jury withdraws. The room holds its breath. An hour passes. The door opens. The foreman's voice wavers. We, the jury, find the defendant, Thomas E. Hale, guilty on all counts. Gasps fill the room. Judge Delaney's gavel echoes, sentenced to 20 years for concealment of homicide and destruction of evidence. As officers lead him away, Hale turns to Laura one last time. No anger? Just a small, peaceful nod. Outside. The courthouse swarms with reporters. Headlines flash. Justice after 46 years. Veteran convicted in Lake Mead. Cover up. Laura stands at the top of the courthouse steps, the wind brushing her hair. Eyes fixed south toward Lake Mead, where it all began. Ray Donovan's words echo in her mind. No guilt sleeps forever. She exhales slowly. Justice came late, but true. This isn't just a case closed after decades. It's a mirror reflecting how silence, loyalty, and fear can bury truth for half a lifetime. Thomas Hale hid behind honor. Richard Whitaker behind reputation. But truth waited, patient, unyielding beneath the water. The silver A.R.W. pendant. The trembling Super 8 reel. The letter whispering, we must protect our honor. All reminders that truth doesn't vanish. It resurfaces, always in a world still wrestling with buried secrets. This story stands as a warning and a promise. Choose truth, even when it hurts. Because silence may delay justice, but it can never kill it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more cold case stories where truth, though delayed, always finds its way.